folks! Why Would You Ask That is a podcast that answers some of the weirdest questions. A lot of those are inappropriate for some listeners. If you're squeamish, easily disturbed, or just having a bad day, this may not be for you. But if you've got to know the answers like we do, stay tuned.
Why Would You Ask That? Presented by me, M, and...
Karen, she, her, and...
Remy, he, they.
Blah, 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 blah. Do you know that ghosts were getting married before gay people?
What? What about gay ghosts?
Gay ghosts couldn't get married until 2016. Sorry, bro.
Oh, that just doesn't seem fair. All the straight ghosts are doing it.
Well, they could do it now.
Well, they couldn't. That's the thing. Alright, tell me about hetero marriages for ghosts.
Yeah, Remster.
Okay. Oh no, somebody at work calls me that.
Remster.
What? Remster? That's a terrible nickname.
It's a very sinful nickname. And that's why I chose to use it in that very moment. But it felt disgusting emerging out of my lips. And I didn't like how it felt on my tongue. It tasted awful. I'm sorry, Rem. No. Yeah, no.
Every time I come in and she sees me, she calls me that. And also another girl that I work with that works night shift with me calls me that sometimes.
It just feels disgusting to say.
No. And the Filipino grandpa that I work with calls me Rem.
Rem is arguably better.
My name is only 4 letters long.
Sometimes you need less letters. My name gets extended. At work, I tell people, call me M. People call me things like Eminem. Like that. Which I'm down.
Eminem ding dong.
I'm down for it. So, it's better than what I used to get. Though, my favorite still is when people called me boss or sensei. That was great. That was a great time in my life. I peaked. I know this.
Senpai.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Senpai. Sensei. Sorry.
You said sensei. I said senpai.
Oh, yeah. At least one person called me senpai at least at one point. I used to have people call me burnt marshmallows and shit. Oh, yeah. Okay. Hetero ghosts getting married.
Oh, burnt marshmallows seems offensive. Yeah, it seems offensive. It seems rude. Like calling somebody a banana or an Oreo. Those are rude things to call people. Okay, back to it. So, yeah, ghosts getting married. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about ghost marriages, and they've been going on for a super long time. So, thousands of years.
Thousands?
They happen in a lot of cultures. They happen in Sudan and France, for example, but I'm going to talk about Chinese ghost marriages because I only have room for one in a single episode. We'll have to come back to those another time.
Oh, man. Fuck yeah.
So, a ghost marriage is a marriage in which one or both parties are dead.
Ah.
Believers in the custom have been, practicing it for about 3,000 years. They say it ensures the unmarried dead are not alone in the afterlife. That's why they do it.
Okay.
There's a book. There's a comic book. The Undertaking of Lily Chen. It's about this exact thing. Yes! The Undertaking of Lily Chen by Danica Novgorodov. Let's learn more!
I googled that so I can keep up with it. Okay. Yeah, there's also a show on Netflix right now that I think is fairly new called Ghost Bride, and it's about this too. I added it to my list recently. I also am linking that on our resource page later. So, ghost marriages. Originally, the weddings were strictly for the dead, a ritual conducted by the living to wed two single deceased people. But in recent times, some have involved one living person being married to a corpse, specifically just to the ghost of the corpse. In ghost marriages between two dead people, the bride's family demands a bride price of some variety, and there's a jewels, money of some sort exchange. Sometimes it's just symbolic, I read. Often it's not very much from what I've gathered from all of my research that I've been doing. One instance that I read about, I think it was only somewhere in the vicinity of about 640 US dollars.
Damn.
It's because the money wasn't important. It was the cultural significance that mattered more than the money did.
To give your daughter to be married to someone who's dead.
No, the both people were dead. Groom and bride were both dead.
Oh.
So what had happened in this situation that I am referring to that I had read about was the daughter had died at 16 and the groom had died at 20 in a car accident. So after the daughter had died, like I think the thing that I was reading said about 2 or 3 days after her death, the family of the groom came to the bride's family and asked for her to be married to their son in the afterlife. And so the groom's family paid the bride price of somewhere in the vicinity of 600 some odd US dollars. I don't remember the yuan amount. And then the groom's family provides literally every other piece of the ceremony. And then they had a little ghost marriage between the two spirits, and then it was all done.
Oh.
Yeah, because in Chinese culture, the groom's family pays for the rest of it anyway. Like, they do all the material stuff, from what I gather. So, the groom's family sometimes uses a spirit medium matchmaker to propose the marriage to the bride's family. Like, they draw up a list of, like, the dowry items, and they, like, some of the articles said a feng shui master, and some of them said matchmaker. I gather that sometimes it's different things and sometimes it's the same thing, to like look up like the birth date compatibilities and stuff like that. And then a lot of other people don't bother doing that. And then they just seek the approval of the deceased for their upcoming union, like ritualistically, and then they perform the wedding ceremony.
Also, you're dead. When you're dead, it doesn't really matter.
The wedding ceremony consists of a lot of the same things that a regular wedding ceremony consists of, but in a super simplified, from my reading. They're a little bit, like, not secretive, because people know they go on, but, like, private, so you don't get to watch them happen unless you're part of the family.
So pretty much everybody just makes it up.
I talk about a personal experience later.
Wait, what?
Not my personal experience. So, depending on the local custom, the ritual can take place at the groom's home or at a local temple. It's going to be a feast afterwards, and the dead at the feast can be represented in a lot of different forms. A spirit tablet inscribed with their names or whichever one of the deceased names, if it's just one, a white rooster, a bamboo and paper effigy meant to be burned later as a funeral offering, or maybe even just like with the bones or corpse itself sometimes, depending on where you're at. So I know that the custom has been practiced for 3,000 years, and we're talking about tradition and stuff. So I just want to make it clear that in modern day China, the ruling Communist Party tells citizens to believe in what they're doing and not in superstition, and discourages the practice, but it still is done in modern China, like right now today. But there's a problem in modern times in that the practice has mutated to like a dark place with some people, because some people have taken to like grave robbing to provide bones and corpses for the practice. When I was reading about this reminded me of how in like the 1800s, like grave robbing became a thing that people did. Like, it became a profession that people got paid for because then you could like dig up corpses and sell them to doctors.
Yeah.
So in 2014, the police in Shandong province arrested 11 men for raiding women's graves and selling the corpses for ghost marriages. And then earlier in March that year, the suspects had exhumed a woman's 3-month-old corpse and sold it for 18,000 yuan, which is about 2,600 US dollars. In 2015, it was reported that 14 female corpses were stolen in one village in Shaanxi province.
Oh, no.
In April 2016, 3 men from Gansu province murdered 2 mentally disabled women to sell their bodies as ghost brides. And then later that year, in 2016, a woman who had multiple physical and intellectual disabilities almost was murdered. She almost got buried alive. She was given some really powerful sedatives that were supposed to kill her, but then they didn't. And she regained consciousness during the burial. And then she, like, thumped around inside the coffin, and the family that had purchased her body were horror-struck and released her.
Yeah.
So it's become an issue in some places.
Sure seems that way.
With a contingency of people who have made it an issue.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Like, your family can be independent, okay? Your family member can be independent. Don't buy bodies on the internet.
Don't go to the dark web. You don't buy yourself a dead wife. Don't buy anybody a dead wife. Not on the internet. No grave robbing.
Because I feel like it sounds like it's cheaper to meet the family, pay the family, and then, you know, your kids are married. Like, I feel like that it's more economical.
Yeah, it sounds a lot cheaper than doing it the bad way.
Yeah, like buying the body.
The government doesn't like it, so it's probably difficult no matter what. I mean, when things get hard, people get desperate and they turn to strange ways to do things.
I feel like the government would like people buying bodies even less than people symbolically buying bodies.
Yeah, the Chinese government, it's illegal to, like, grave rob and sell bodies. So those men are going to go to jail. The prison sentences are not very long, from what I was reading in those cases, but still. And then ghost marriages, though, are not illegal in any way. They discourage it, but it's not illegal. They're not telling you not to do it. Like, they can't make you not do it. It's not a crime. And they haven't passed any laws against it, but they're discouraging you from doing it. So, like, you can still do it. You can still practice it. But if you dig up a body to do it, then you have a problem. If you grave rob to do it, I should say, then you have a problem.
It's the way, like, communism is in, like, most places where was China
Yes, China's a communist place. For last year, it says Xi's dictatorship threatens the Chinese state from one website. Okay, so I guess some people consider him to be a dictator. I guess other people don't.
I know he's like an authoritarian.
Oh, okay, he did away with term limits recently. Yeah, it says Xi Jinping has been reversing reforms since he took power. He did away with term limits and collective leadership. ... is what this says. So that's what he's been doing recently. Anyway, now we can go back to it.
So, yeah, most countries that their leaders have enacted communism on their economies also have laws, or not laws, I guess, but also have a discouraging message against spiritualism and superstition and religion in general.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess if my, like, government, if they were mildly oppressive, at the least, were discouraging me from doing something, I would probably not want to do it.
I feel encouraged. Do more of it.
That's just your personality.
Do more crimes.
So, according to Huang Jingchun, a folklore expert at Shanghai University who's been studying the subject of afterlife marriage for 15 years now.
Wow, damn.
And who carried out years of field research. I think he has carried out 2 or 3 years of field research around China's Luz Plateau and nearby areas. The price of a corpse or the bones of a young woman have risen sharply in recent years. So this was around, like, 2019 was the article that I was reading that said that. So at the time of his research, 2019, such remains would fetch around 30,000 to 50,000 yuan, which is about 4,500 to 7,500 USD. Okay, and that was a time of his research would have been, sorry, this says 2010. So in 2019, he estimates it would be about 100,000 yuan.
That's a lot. That's a lot of cheese.
Yes, which is significantly more. I think I read in a different article that 120,000 yuan was around, like, 50,000 USD or something.
It's a lot of cheddar.
A lot of cheese. Oh, I'm I'm wrong. 100,000 yuan is about 15,000 USD. Still a whole lot. So, the sale of corpses was officially outlawed in 2006.
Good. I feel like that is not that long ago, but good. Oh, wow.
It's not that long ago, no. He also says in areas where ghost marriages still happen that it's seen as very normal. He says, quote, "No one tries to hide the practice or to not talk about it. On the contrary, people are surprised that this can be a research subject and are surprised that other people are surprised." End quote. In Shaanxi Province's Hongdong County, Dr. Huang said even his taxi drivers had all either had firsthand experience arranging a marriage or have witnessed a ghost marriage wedding being held by neighbors or friends.
Very common.
So, why does it happen still in the modern times, I guess, is the next question. So in places such as Shaanxi, there are large numbers of young, unmarried men working in coal mining where fatalities are really high. So the ghost wedding serves as a form of emotional compensation for bereaved relatives, as finding a dead bride is something they can do for a son who also died young while working to support the family. And then there's also the issue of like the male to female sex ratio is really significant. In 2017, for example, which is like the statistic that I could find like readily, there were 32.66 million more males than females.
Whoa.
According to the National Bureau of Statistics.
Well, that's no good.
Yeah, it's a lot. Many Chinese men struggle to find a wife when numbers are like that, so skewed, and things become more complicated, obviously, when you are deceased.
Who'd have thunk? I have a hard enough time as it is. Imagine if I were dead.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it would make you more attractive. I don't know.
Wow! I've been murdered!
Wasn't meaning you specifically. Listen.
So for the deceased bachelors in rural China, where, quote, many women leave to work in the city, rural families, conscious of China's two-child now policy, abort female fetuses before birth and abandon newborn girls, end quote. Professor Ping Yao said, who is a history professor at California State University in Los Angeles. So, going back to the previous bit about grave robbers, this is where that comes in places like Shaanxi, where thousands of young men die in coal mine accidents. It's hard for families to find their sons, ghost or otherwise, a ghost bride. And it's even such that an employee at one Shaanxi hospital was quoted as saying that once the news of a young girl dying spreads, like dozens of families who had lost their sons would rush to the hospital for a quote-unquote auction war.
That sucks.
Yeah, for the rights to pay that family of the deceased girl for the right for her spirit to marry the spirit of their son.
Do we have anything like equivalent in North America?
Mormonism has something. So for North America, Mormonism has something called marriage by proxy. So according to the doctrines of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, marriage is eternal and death doesn't matter. So marriage is known as sealing, quote, quote, for Mormonism, binds a couple to one another for the rest of their lives and after, provided that both spouses conduct themselves according to the LDS interpretation of the teachings of Jesus Christ. So the Mormon belief that marriage is eternal allows for a wedding ceremony to be performed on those who have already died in a manner similar to posthumous Mormon baptisms, which is also a thing. So the proxy sealing ceremonies take place in an LDS temple, are intended to be initiated only by the descendants of those concerned. So that's a thing that we have that's similar.
There we go.
So something that's super gross about Mormonism and their sealing ceremonies is that it doesn't always work out the way that it says, where both people have to be like Mormon and this has to be conducted by like the church or whatever, because Thomas Jefferson and his enslaved Sally Hemings, they were not married, and
No.
the LDS Church considers them sealed to one another for eternity, even though they weren't married and they weren't Mormon.
You can't just decide that.
Why do they even care? Why do they even care?
Yeah, so the LDS Church posthumously baptized them and wed them to Mormonism.
No.
Yeah, that's disgusting. It's disgusting. Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings' quote-unquote relationship is disgusting in and of itself on his part.
Yeah.
And not that she had any choice in the matter. And it's super disgusting that they would do that. And yeah, that's... but that's a thing that we have in North America that is similar to ghost marriages that China does. We can talk about ghost marriages in other cultures outside of China, because they do it in a bunch of other cultures, like, because we have them here in the United States in Mormonism, but they do them in France and Sudan and Japan and, like, South Africa has a version. Like, they do them in a bunch of places.
Can I marry a fictional person?
You can't marry the guy who broke up your marriage. I'm
He's
so sorry.
taken, bro.
I know.
Okay, let's circle back.
Sorry.
Okay. Dr. Huang believes there are also more fundamental cultural reasons. Many Chinese people believe misfortune will be brought upon them if the dead's wishes have not been fulfilled. Hosting a ghost wedding is a means to pacify the dead. So, quote, the basic ideology behind ghost weddings is that the deceased continue their lives in the afterlife, end quote, Dr. Huang said. So, end quote, so if someone didn't get married when they lived, they still need to be wedded after their death, end quote. So the ideology for that goes back a long ways. A really famous example of ghost marriages comes from the 3rd century. That is of somebody named, hold on, I gotta get it. It's got a TS sound at the beginning, so I practiced this. Yeah, it's like, hold on. Chow Chong.
I want to see it. Zhao?
So it will be pronounced like this.
Zhao.
Yeah, Chong is the last name. I got the last name. So you say it. This guy and his dad.
What? Zhao Zhao?
Yeah, pretty close to what it sounded like when the Mandarin guy said it on the recording. So, there's a famous example of ghost marriages from the 3rd century, so that is, take it away,
So we have Zhao Zheng, Zhao Zhao.
So the first one's the son of the second one, a Han-era warlord. So when his son died at 13, he officiated at his ghost wedding. At the time, many Chinese believed that the souls of the dead still had the same social needs as the living, and even though they resided in the underworld, like the social structure of the underworld is like the same as it is in the living world. So like in the living world, you have like the emperor and all of his court and everything, and the underworld also has like the Jade Emperor and all of that court. So ideally, the soul of one's spouse would provide companionship in the underworld, but not everyone got married before they died. The vast majority of those who died unmarried would also have failed to fulfill the cultural imperative to have children and extend the family line, and therefore had nobody to honor their memory on Tomb Sweeping Day or other festivals. So their spirits would be angry and unfulfilled, and the ghost of the deceased was believed to haunt its family and ask for a spouse to keep them company on the other side, either by appearing in its mother's dreams or by bringing misfortune to the household. Ooh. The ghost had become like a sort of half-stranger. It belonged because it was familiar, but also should not stay because now it was a ghost. So, the early death created other problems for like the still living relatives. Custom dictated that siblings should marry in order of seniority. The premature death of an elder brother or sister prevented his or her younger siblings from finding their own marital happiness. Yeah. If the deceased was a man, a living woman might consent to marry him for whatever reason it was that she was doing that. She would be widowed immediately upon the marriage, though. So like she would marry the spirit and then she would just immediately become a widow because her husband was dead. And she would live chastely with her husband's living family after that. This would be like applauded as an act of supreme feminine virtue and sacrifice, but it was unlikely ever to have been like popular. And the husband's relatives could then adopt a young child, preferably from the same extended family as his son. So then their line would be continued on in that way. But then things got trickier if the deceased was female, because women traditionally became part of their husband's lineages after marriage, so they would be enshrined upon death on the ancestral altar of that family, of their new family, of their husband's family. So when the woman died, they were not then supposed to be enshrined in their own family's area.
Boy, that's rough.
Yeah, that's rough. So people believed that doing so would enrage the other ancestors and invite disaster. So ghost marriages were seen as a way to help with this problem by giving that spirit a place to go. Gives her companionship in the afterlife, but also doesn't leave her just like an unmoored spirit.
Yeah. But that sucks. Why can't you... As if your kid's dead. Like, I don't know. I feel like you should, I know it's tradition, but man, tradition is just peer pressure from dead people.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna enforce my US thoughts on their culture, because I don't know. I don't know what's going on with their culture. I'm not part of it. I can't talk about what's happening with 3,000 years worth of Chinese culture. And I don't know where it came from that they decided that the woman couldn't be would become part of that, or why they decided that she couldn't just be buried with her own family if she didn't get married. I don't have the cultural understanding as not being a Chinese person to talk about it. So I'm just going to present the facts.
I have no experience in this at all. Neither does Karen.
Yeah.
Neither does Remy. We're just out here talking about shit, and that's why I asked for an example, because it sounds bad, but one, I could see the purpose, and when it's normal, when we're not having people rob graves and shit like that.
Yeah, done in the normal, respectful way. It has a lot of significant cultural reasons that people do it, and it's not a bad thing at all. Grave robbing is always a bad thing.
Yeah, if you're being a whole fucko about it, then fuck off. Jesus fucking Christ.
Get out of here with your crime.
For me, it's about it's when they venture into making it a business. That's what's the gross part. Because the money that the family gives to the bride's family is supposed to be a sort of way to honor her and to honor them with a gift of compensation for, it's like a dowry.
It is a dowry. It's exactly what it is.
They do it. It's just what it is. And it's a form of respect. Whereas, grave robbing and then charging out the wazoo for a body that isn't even yours, isn't even in your family, that's a business. And that's disgusting. That for me.
It is. It's super disgusting to grave rob people and sell loved ones' bodies.
Yeah, it takes all the sacredness out of it. So
respect the dead.
And people are desperate to be able to do this, to be able to do the ceremony for their loved ones. So they do that. So they pay for the body, if they're desperate, like Em said, desperate times. And that's sad. And shame on those criminals that did the grave robbing.
I just gotta say, very few people deserve respect, but if you're dead, nice. Respect. No, you gotta, I said nice, and then respect, because I respect somebody who's dead, unless they don't deserve it. You have to have a lot of crimes on your plate to be disrespected after death. The whole dying part is doing people a favor so everybody thinks kindly of you after you're dead, and it really wipes a lot of slates clean. Yes. But then,
some people
just keep on adding the plate. They grab the whole buffet. You're like, bro, yeah.
Yeah, the weight of their soul outweighs all of they've just piled the shit onto their scales. And it is not good. Yeah, it's buried. It's buried under all the shit. Okay.
Okay.
Back to it.
As far as where it's practiced, like in China, it's generally practiced in northern and central China, but the custom exists among Chinese communities in Southeast Asia also. So, like in Taiwan, if an unmarried woman passes away, her family may place like little red packets with cash, a lock of hair, and a fingernail out in the open and wait for a man to come and pick it up. And the first man to come by and pick it up is chosen as the groom, and it's believed to be bad luck if he refuses to marry the bride after that.
Oh.
So M asked, I think it was M asked earlier what the wedding rituals are like. So wedding rituals are similar, but unlike in mainland China, no bones are dug up. In like Taiwan, the groom is often allowed to marry a living woman later, unlike the women who just stay unmarried and chaste. But his ghost wife should be revered as the primary wife. So, like I said, ghost weddings are done in a sort of like private fashion and like a family. It's like a family affair, you know, between the groom's family and the bride's family. So while I was researching, I encountered a story from someone who has firsthand experience with a ghost wedding. He's an ABC journalist named Bang Xiao, who is from China's central Hunan province. So I also have a picture of a ghost wedding. So yeah, so this image is the living groom here at the front, and then he's got like the coffin here, and then you can see in the back is the picture of his girlfriend who had died.
Sad.
Oh no, she died. Like they were dating, and then she died. Oh.
That's the shrine back there in the back. With her tablet on it and her picture, and then you got her picture also up on the TV in the back over there where everybody can see it.
Oh, I love all the pink.
Yeah, so he went ahead and followed through with the engagement and married her anyway. So he like married her spirit, like it did a ghost wedding with her spirit. So he can get married again later, but she'll be considered his primary wife. And then when he dies, she'll be his wife in the underworld too.
Aww.
So, in 2009, for the ABC journalist, he says, in 2009, 1 year after his friend Li Chaolong died of leukemia in a hospital in China's Hunan province, his mother found him a bride named Li Ziying from the same village who had also died, who was about to die, like hours away from dying, of kidney failure. So, the bride passed away shortly after his friend's mother had found her, and the two families hugged and cried and had a funeral for her and grieved and then celebrated. And the day after, they had a wedding, and the couple, who both had passed away at a young age and had never met each other while they were alive, they were buried together at the family's, like the groom's family grave area.
Aww.
But it's really beautiful.
The marriage was incredibly significant for the families. In the first year after he had died, the elders of his family, forbade his mother to bury him in the family grave because he had died as a bachelor. So it would be seen as bringing bad luck to their family, they had said, to his grandmother in particular, who was still alive at the time, if he had been allowed into the family grave. But as the tradition goes, passing away without continuing the family line made him unworthy to rest alongside his ancestors. So, for the bride's parents, if a ghost marriage had not been arranged for their daughter as a female, she would never have been allowed to have been formally buried anywhere at all.
Aww.
So, that's why they were so hugging and like weeping and celebratory, because they found each other in the same village and were able to have a place to bury the body of their daughter, and also for their daughter's spirit to immediately be able to go into the underworld accompanied, and for their son to be buried in the family burial area, and also to be able to go into the underworld accompanied to be with his family.
It's so, that's so sad that they, have to rely on this kind of, I mean, it has to be serendipitous in order for, what would have happened if she hadn't, if those families had not met. she would have no place to be buried, and he wouldn't be allowed to be buried in his family's, with his family. So it's like, it kind of, it's just like they have to rely on that in order for these things, for their bodies to be at rest. And that's, I mean, I understand that it's a tradition. It's just kind of being a parent of someone and not being able to bury my child where I'm going to be. That would be really sad. So understanding their joy at finding each other is just like thinking about the families who maybe didn't have those circumstances. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I agree.
But this is, a totally different world from the one that we live in. And there's a lot of beautiful things that we've heard about this today. So I'm glad that this is a really interesting tradition. There's some, bad things that came about from it, but it's still beautiful.
Yep. Well, that's anything. I feel like that's anything. People inherently suck, I think. Human beings will find a way to suck at anything.
Yeah, that's anything. That happens. Listen, look, have we talked about the Crusades? So really, yeah. So honestly, for me, for the most part, I think ghost marriage, that's beautiful.
Yeah. To us over here in this part of the world, it seems probably a little weird and maybe like creepy, but it's been part of their culture and tradition for a really long time, thousands of years. And they have so much like significance, cultural significance to it. And I'm not going to try to like pretend I understand anything that's going on with some of it, but I get like some of the beauty of it. And I understand other parts of it, and I'm glad that I learned about it because I like learning things. And so, like, ghost marriage has evolved as an act of like humanness aimed to comfort the dead and the living, which is beautiful. And at its core, it's just about like the universal dilemma of how to deal with bereavement, and it's kind of just like a beautiful way to do it. Every culture has their own unique way to do that, make sure their loved one is okay after death.
Yeah, and just making sure that your loved one is okay after they're gone. And like probably dealing with a bit of the survivor's guilt of being like, well, now what? Yeah, I love that. This is a sweet way to do it, Good work, Remy. Thanks for taking us and showing us all of this, teaching us about it. I would love it if anybody knows even more about this, has like firsthand experience or like secondhand experience. I mean, just if anybody knows anything about it, we'd love to hear.
When I die, give my body to the birds.
Tibetan sky burial.
Yeah.
I want to be turned into a tree.
We turned my mom into a tree.
Aww, love that.
But thanks everybody for listening. We are very excited to take your questions too, because we want to hear them and we want to answer them, and we are so super qualified to answer questions. So what you can do is you could visit our website, which is whywouldyouskthat.com, and go to that little contact form, throw in a question, or you can email us at whywouldyouskthatpod@gmail.com. So please send us your questions. We don't care how weird it is, how gross it is. Just don't ask any personal questions. That's our one line. Ask your weird questions. That's what we want. So thank you for listening. This is M, Karen, and Remy, and ask us some shit. Thank you. Good night.